Welcome to Undercurrents of Romance, the show that celebrates every subgenre of romantic fiction. In each episode, I peel back the layers of your favorite love stories and chat with the talented authors who bring them to life. I'm your host, Tracey Devlyn. Now, let's dive in with today's guest. Hello, romantics. I'm here with author Karen Dukess to talk about her new romantic cozy mystery, Welcome to Murder Week. Welcome to the show, Karen.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. I did happen to notice in your bio that you were a tour guide in the former Soviet Union. So how much fun was that?
Well, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. I did it when I was quite young because I'd studied Russian in college, and it was a way to travel around the then Soviet Union and get paid to do it. I think I've dated
Yeah.
myself here. People are like now wondering, how old is she? This is a long time ago. It was fun, but it was also like being a waitress 24/7 in a bad restaurant, where you're not responsible for everything, but you take the blame for everything because traveling was
Yes.
not so easy back then. But it was fun.
Yeah.
It was a great adventure.
Oh, good. Good, good. Have you retained your ability to speak the language?
Yes, not so well anymore though. I lived in Russia a
Yeah.
long time ago. I worked as a journalist there, so it was pretty good then, but I've been back here for more than 20 years and I don't use it very much. So I do
Yeah.
still speak Russian, but not super well.
Yeah. You probably can understand it
Yeah.
better than you
Yeah,
can speak it now, I imagine.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
that's really neat. That's
Yeah,
interesting. You don't hear about too many folks who know that particular language.
that
So
is
it's
true.
kind of neat and interesting whenever you do. So I had to kind of tweak you about that just a little
Yep.
bit. Well, why don't you get us started by telling us a little bit about yourself and your writing journey, just whatever you'd like to
Okay.
share.
So I would say I'm a late bloomer as an author. Although I started early as a child, I loved to write, and I used to, on boring Sundays at home, I would write stories, and I loved writing. But then when I continued as an adolescent and in college, but I sort of lost the confidence that a child has and the joy that a child has in writing. And so I spent the first couple of decades of my career sort of circling around the kind of writing that ultimately I would do, which is fiction writing. So I was a journalist and I was a speechwriter, and I would dabble in fiction, but I didn't really continue with it. I think I thought it was supposed to be easier than it was. So whenever it got hard, I would stop and think, okay, I'm not really a fiction writer. And it wasn't until I was until I was about almost 50 that I joined a writing group, where you would just show up with any kind of writing each week. Sometimes the leader would have given us a prompt to just a sort of a starting point. And I was writing, all different things and just learning to loosen up a bit, which was great. And I started writing a piece of memoir, about something that had happened to me when I was in my 20s in Cape Cod. And I needed to keep going with it because I had to bring in material every week. And one week I was working on it, just kind of went fictive. A character appeared who was not real, and I didn't know what he was doing there, and he had some kind of secret. And the leader of the writing group said, just keep going, see what happens. And I didn't realize that you could write that way, and I had been a journalist and a speechwriter, and you can't really write that way. In those fields, you have to know what you're saying. And um, I didn't realize that many fiction writers write in order to discover what they're writing. That the first draft can be that discovery
Mhm.
process, and then you go back and see what you've done, and then you shape it and fix it and make it into a proper story. So that memoir piece that I continued and became fiction eventually became my first novel, which I spent a couple years working on and learning about fiction and learning that no, it's supposed to be hard. Everybody struggles, and I finished it and I sold it. That was The Last Book Party, which was came out in 2019. And then it's funny that you mentioned Russia because I worked for 2.5 years on a novel that was drawing on my experiences living in Russia as a journalist. It was about an American woman and some Russian friends in Moscow in 2018, 2017, and also in the 1990s when I was there. Um, and that novel was not a lot of fun to write. I think I sold my first novel very easily, and I sort of had second novel syndrome, thinking like, can I do this again? And plus, I felt like this is my Russian novel where I have to figure out what I want to say about Russia. And then I was trying to sell it in the months like right after Russia had invaded Ukraine, and Russia
Mm.
was nobody's favorite topic. And it also, I questioned the novel because suddenly, like, history had just overtaken it and it seemed very anachronistic. So, my agent, he liked it. We submitted it to a few publishers, but it was just really bad timing and I didn't feel comfortable with it anymore. So I decided to set it aside, which was, demoralizing, depressing. And but because of that experience, I decided that if I was going to do this again and spend several years writing another novel that maybe would not sell, I had to write something fun. And that's how I ended up writing Welcome to Murder Week, which was inspired by a trip that I took to the Peak District, beautiful area of England, with my sister. I did not go there to research a novel. I went there just to have fun with my sister. But while I was there, I had such a great time. I was so enchanted with the area, and the whole time I felt like I was stepping into the pages of my favorite British novels and my favorite mystery shows on television, on BritBox, on Masterpiece Theater. I was seeing everything through the lens of fiction. And my sister was too. And it was just funny for us. Like every time we saw something that seemed like some archetypical, typical, British thing, like a vicar in a churchyard, we'd be thinking about the murder mystery. Is this a good vicar or a bad vicar? And it just put me in this really playful mood. And when I came back, I decided to write a novel about some Americans that go to the Peak District in England to participate in a fake murder mystery week where the village has come together. It's a fundraiser for them to bring tourism back to their village after COVID, and they stage an English village murder mystery for BritBox obsessed Americans who come to solve this novel. So, as you know, my novel focuses on a 34-year-old woman, Kath, who discovers after her very flighty, estranged mother dies that she'd bought tickets for them to go. And Kath goes and teams up, shares a cottage with two other people, very unlike herself, a 50-year-old
But
newly
wonderful. Yeah.
divorced romance
Yeah.
writer and a 40-year-old man who works very unhappily in his husband's birding store, and his husband has sent him on this trip. And they team up to solve the fake mystery, but they also solve the real mystery of why Kath's mother wanted to go. And I just had so much fun writing it. I
Yeah.
don't think anything like this actually exists. I know there are murder mystery weekends you can go on, like you stay in a castle and there are actors that act out a mystery, but I have yet to hear of a village putting one on. I think it would be pretty
Okay.
difficult to do, but it was
It,
fun
wa-
to make up.
Yeah, it was that question actually came to mind. I'm like, is this a thing that she's come across and or was
I
this
mean,
like just
maybe
an
it exists
original
somewhere.
idea? Yeah, it was so much fun, and I really really enjoyed the quirky characters. They were all each very unique, and I could actually visualize them. I can't always visualize secondary characters.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot of British specific words
Yes.
and some slang in there. Did you have a favorite character, besides your protagonist?
Um,
Did you have a favorite character in there that you just had a delight writing?
Yeah, I think probably Wyatt, who's
Yeah.
the cottage maid, who's this tall, gangly
Yeah.
man who's very funny and thinks his husband sent him away to kind of get rid of him, which is not the case exactly. He's just one of these characters that just kind of appeared fully formed. I don't know if you've had this experience. I
Yeah.
hadn't really before. Um, I've heard authors talk about how a character just appears and they've got his voice and they know his body language and everything. And he kind of just appeared that way. And I liked his humor and I also made him the character. Well, he and Amity, the romance writer, sort of knew the most about murder mysteries, so I could kind of throw in all sorts of trivia about Golden Age detective stories and things about England. Yeah, he was just fun to write. Honestly, I was just amusing myself writing this book. I'm like, I don't know if this book is going to sell. There's no guarantee. I just have to enjoy it. So,
And the fun that you had writing it comes through in the prose as well. So I there were times that I'd find myself just smiling as I'm reading along, and that doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
But so it's really it's for a reader because I consider myself a reader first. It's always fun to have that because what pure readers might not understand sometimes once you've become an author and you're a writer, it's hard to get immersed into a
Yeah.
story
I know you're too
because
critical.
you're critical, you're constantly editing or you're evaluating and all
That's
these
true.
things that disrupt the fun and the flow. And so yeah, I had some real delightful moments reading this novel. So I think you did a great job, and I think it's amazing that you were able to publish your first novel. That does not always happen. And
Yeah.
so that just goes to show what a grasp you had through your journalism and through your speech writing, just, of how to structure things to tell a story, right? Because even with
Yeah.
speech
I mean,
writing, you're telling a story in a sense.
yeah, but I felt like I had to unlearn a lot of things about journalism and speech writing to write a novel.
Mm,
There's so many things about journalism speech writing that are the opposite. Like you want
yeah.
to put all the information up front in a newspaper article. If the editor is going to cut, they're going to cut from the bottom. So you front load it. And I had to really learn that in fiction, you need to withhold things, to keep the reader interested, to
Yeah.
keep them curious, and to establish suspense.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, I never thought about it that way, but
yeah,
that's
so
a really good
yeah.
point. Yeah.
And I feel like my career was sort of backwards. Like usually people don't sell the first novel and they sell the second novel. I sold the first novel and I didn't sell the second novel. And I can't say I love that experience, but I don't think I would have written this novel if I had sold the second novel. So,
Yeah.
took a
Yeah.
little longer than I wanted to get here, but I felt
It's just meant to
very
be.
yeah, but I felt very clear about not writing a novel that I thought I should write, but just truly writing like the novel I wanted to read, the novel that I wanted to write at that moment. So I was very true to
Hmm.
myself, um,
Yeah.
which was a good thing.
And you might find going back a couple of years, or in a couple of years, I should say, going back to your Russian novel, that
Yeah,
the timing
possible.
might be better. You might be able to look at it with fresh eyes and, maybe see what wasn't bringing you joy,
Yeah,
the
no,
first
that's
time.
true. Yeah,
So
I looked at
that's,
it recently for the first time in a really long time, and I thought maybe I'll just have instant clarity on what to do with it. I didn't. And I do think if I were going to try it again, I would revise it a lot, but I think I would, there were parts of it I really loved and parts of it that I didn't. So I think you're right. I think I would use a lot of it. I would like to make something of it someday.
yeah.
I don't think it'll be published as is.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the hero, the Dev. And
Uh-huh.
I love that you made him an artisanal gin maker. That was
Yes.
fun. And Kath's first experience with at least his gin
Yes.
was that was a really fun scene. He's just so gentle with her. Where did he come from? Did you were you inspired by someone, or is he kind of an amalgamation of different folks, or just pure
Um,
imagination?
No, he wasn't. He didn't really come from any particular person. I mean, initially, so the first scene, as you recall, when she meets Dev, she thinks he's not for real because the scenario in which she meets
Yeah.
him, I won't describe the whole thing, but she thinks it's part of the acting. So she's not sure if he's an actor or not. So that was really like the first thing. Like I wanted her to be in the village and just be confused as to who's real and who's not real. So she thinks he's not real when she realizes that he is, and she's kind of insulted him in the process of not, you know, of not realizing that he's being serious. Um, that scene was just, fun to write. And then I knew that I wanted Kath, she goes on this trip kind of cynically, like her mother bought this trip. She doesn't know why. She's not a murder mystery fan. She's lived a very kind of narrow life, primarily because her mother was so flighty and was always chasing romance and chasing passion.
Mm.
And um, being with different men and following them around, and then it would fall apart and she'd do it again. And Kath was so determined not to be that way because she did not want to be like her mother. Her mother had left her as a child, left her to be raised by her paternal grandmother, and was just, really flighty, moving around the country, etc. And so I knew that I wanted Kath to realize that the way she was being in reaction to her mother, she learns things about her mother that she realized her whole interpretation of her mother was wrong. And that the way she was being was the way she was trying to protect herself from love was kind of based on her idea of why her mother was the way she was. So I knew I wanted Dev to be just a very different kind of person, just a very happy where he lives. He lives where he grew up. Well, he lives where his mother grew up. He's taking care of his elderly mother who has dementia. I mean, he's a really good person. He's almost too good to be true. A friend of mine
Yeah.
read it, was like, I don't know. He's handsome and he makes gin and he takes care of his mother who has dementia. Like, oh
Yeah.
my God, he's amazing. But I think I made him kind of fun as well. So I think the original impetus was to just like have him be someone who was very solid, but was game to play along with this sort of, am I real or am I not real? Am I acting or am I not acting? And Kath, who's very self-protective and starts out saying she doesn't want to fall in love, is kind of lets herself go into it with that summer romance kind of feeling, like, oh, I'm only here for a week, so I can throw myself into it, and then realizes that this is maybe more than that. So I just
Yeah.
had fun with him. I like I liked writing the banter between the two of them.
Yes. Yeah. No, it was
Yeah.
great.
And he makes great cocktails. So,
Yes, as Kath found out.
yes,
Beware the blackberry one. Um,
exactly.
well, one of the things I like to dive into on this show is finding the story's undercurrent with the author. It's
Yeah.
that second beating heart of the story.
Hmm.
And what do you feel is the undercurrent that's flowing beneath Kath and Dev's story? Now, with your novel, the romance it probably isn't like center point,
No, it's
right?
not.
Yeah. So, but there tends to be a lot of undercurrents in novels,
Yeah.
too. So,
Yeah. I mean, I think of it as like a mystery with a side of romance
yeah,
more than a
yeah.
romance with some
It's a very
mystery.
slow burn romance.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
it's
slow burn
great.
romance. And it's funny, I don't know if you have this experience, but some things happen when you're writing that you're not even aware of happening. Like Kath goes on this journey because of her mother, and she had a difficult relationship with her mother, and she thinks she doesn't have to grieve her mother because her mother left her essentially when she was 9. It would only sort of pop in and out of her life. So she
Mhm.
feels like I've grieved her already. Like she's disappointed me. I've lost her. I don't have to grieve her actual death. But of course she does. And I think grief is more complicated when you have a difficult relationship with your mother.
Mm.
And then without even really thinking about, I didn't consciously do it, but I created this hero, Dev, who also his mother is a big part of his life. And he's moved home because of his mother. And he's taking care of his mother. And Kath sees all these differences between them and that, oh, I guess it seems so simple with him. Like his mother raised him well, and now he's taking care of
Yeah.
her. And that's so foreign to Kath. The whole thing is just she's constantly observing people. Like Amity, sees things in a positive way, and she thinks, of course, an optimist would see things in this nice way. She's just so colored by her own experience. So I think for Kath, the undercurrent is really realizing that her whole way of living is based on a narrative she's told herself about her mother and how she thinks she should be. And there's a lot in the story, including in the fake mystery, that has to do with mothers and children. Um, so I really think it's the heart of the story. I think the romance is a key part of it, but I think it's really Kath coming to terms with learning things about her own
Mhm.
history and coming to terms with how she's protected herself, in her desire to not be as flighty as her mother. She's really cut herself off from experience, including a really great romance with someone wonderful like this handsome gin maker.
Yeah. No, I think that's great.
And it's
All
funny,
right.
it wasn't really expected. Like, I knew once I had a first draft that the murder mystery part was fun, but I'm like, this is fake. It can't be the heart of the story. The heart of the story has to be sort of Kath's journey. And it's just so interesting. I didn't really anticipate that I was writing a grief journey. Um, in this sort of
Mm,
happy, fun story. But a lot of the early reviewers have commented on that, and it's interesting. I think I
yeah.
struck the right balance because I didn't want to write a sad book. I wanted
No.
to write
Yeah.
a fun book, but I also, the books I love have, an emotional journey to them too, that it's not just
Hmm.
like a clever romp, but something that you feel something.
Yeah,
So,
the depths,
yeah,
those are the
yeah,
undercurrents that we're talking about.
yeah, yeah,
The many
exactly.
layers and the depth to the novel. It just, yeah, it draws you in further and further,
Yeah,
and you get to know these characters, and you really start rooting for them, and you hurt for them as well. So yeah, I think
yeah.
that's job well done, because
Thank you.
you did that with this for
Thank you.
sure.
I think I didn't want it to be like this charming gin maker comes in and saves her,
Yeah.
that's not what fixes her, that she kind of goes through a long journey before they ultimately
Right.
find each other again.
Yeah. No, I think that was a perfect decision. Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the things I like to ask is about tropes in your
Mhm.
book. What can you think of, maybe two or three tropes that pop up in this book?
Um, I don't really think in terms of tropes. I know that's a big thing in romance writing.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the reasons my book ended up the way it is because I am sort of ignorant of tropes and genres. My first novel was
Yeah.
sort of a somewhat literary coming of age of a writer's story. This one, mystery, but it's a fake mystery with some romance. And I didn't really think about genre. Like I didn't think, okay, if it's romance, then which trope? And how am I gonna put it together? I just kind of wrote this mix of things, which is kind of a
Hmm.
genre blend, I think. And that, the murder mystery isn't even a real mystery. I mean, I'm thinking of what is there a trope for like I mean, it's a little bit, it's not enemies to friends, but they start out, I mean, is there a trope for like
Right.
fake romantic hero?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
The mistrust trope? I don't know. Um, I don't think
Yeah,
I know the trope.
I think the one that came to my mind as I was reading it would be like forced proximity, because they're in this
Yes.
small village. So I
Yeah.
think that would be one that's always a
Yeah.
fun trope for readers. So I
Yeah,
think that,
definitely. And then I
yeah.
guess this is not a romance trope, but it is more like in Kath's relationship with her cottage mates, it's sort of a found family thing.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think
And
that's a romance trope
yeah.
too. Yeah,
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 okay. And
absolutely.
also
Yeah.
the is there a trope where it's like, I have Kath as well as her cottage mates, they've all traveled somewhere away from home, so they're sort of, fish out of water, they're in a foreign place. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that's
That's
a trope. Is that a
Yeah,
trope?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Fish out
Maybe
of
I
water.
do
You
know
better
about
see,
tropes. I just
you do know about tropes.
okay. Because I love the idea of putting people together who never would have met each other. Like
Hmm.
Kath and Amity and Wyatt are sharing a cottage. They're living together and they're solving the mystery together. And Kath is 34 and single, and she's like, I'm never going to get married. I don't need to be in love. I'm not interested. Wyatt is married, but he thinks his husband is tired of him. And Amity is recently divorced and maybe more angry about it than she realizes because her husband has left her. And so there are three
Yeah.
people from different, one's from Buffalo, one's from New Jersey, one's from San Francisco area. They're just from different worlds, and but yet because they come together and they don't know each other, they have no context for each other. It's like when you show up somewhere and they only know each other as they are at that moment, it kind of makes them all
Hmm.
very free to be very open. Like I think they're very open with each other right away.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. You can
And
tell
there's
there's a
something
connection with them. Yeah,
yeah, so
absolutely. Yeah.
and I think that found family thing is a fun thing, I think.
It is. It is absolutely. Is there a romance book that you've read recently that you could recommend, and why? And if you can't think of a romance, just any book that you've read
Yeah, no, I
recently.
can think of a romance. One of my probably my favorite romance writer, and she's marketed as romance, but it could also be marketed as just women's fiction. I don't understand all these distinctions, but it's Annabel Monaghan. Her
Mm.
first novel is called Nora Goes Off Script, which I loved. She's a friend of mine, and so I've been fortunate enough to read her novel that's coming out a week from today, called It's a Love Story, and
Ah,
it's
yes.
wonderful. And I love her writing because she's written, I think this is her fourth book, and she's written about younger women, but she's also written about older women. And this one, the woman is, well, she's not older, she's a lot younger than I am. She's in her late 30s, but she's divorced. And no, I'm getting mixed up because I've read her new novel that has coming out in a year. Um, but no, this woman is not divorced, but she writes, I think of them as um, they're very romantic, they're very swoony, they're not spicy at all, but there's just so much life wisdom in them. They're she writes really well about marriage and children and grief and but they're just funny and fun, but they're really also so wise. You know, she's
Okay.
not she's in her 50s and she's just got a wonderful way of just grabbing you right away. And her characters are, it's never just about the romance. I mean, they are romance centered, but there's
Hmm.
just so much character growth in them as well. I just love them. I just love them.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great, great.
she's
I
great.
will add
Highly
that into the
recommend.
show notes as well.
Yeah,
So thank
yeah,
you for
that book's
that.
coming out next week. And if you love it, then she's got three previous ones that you'll love.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Wonderful. Well, before we go, can you give us a hint of what's coming up next?
I can give you a hint. It's not done yet, but I am working on a novel that continues with one of the characters from Welcome to Murder Week. So,
Ah.
Welcome to Murder Week is written in the first person from Kat's perspective. So it's her story, but Wyatt and Amity have their own arc as well. So you get to know them and they change throughout the course of the novel. So I'm working on a novel which is narrated by Amity and is continuing with her after this trip when she's
Oh,
made some decisions to do some things differently. And it kind of follows her. And there is also a mystery in that one.
oh,
Not
wonderful.
finished.
Yeah, I was hoping that there would be a follow-up to it.
Yeah, that's, I don't know.
Yeah,
Have you ever
that's
written this?
great.
Do you write sequels? I've never done that.
Yeah, yeah,
Kind of
yeah.
scary though, right? It's like, can you, you know,
Yeah, it is, but I think once you get into it, you're going to find you've already built the world. I mean, and
yeah.
I don't know if you're going to be doing kind of the murder week thing or not, or if it's just going
No,
to be
it'll be
like a
different
separate
locations.
mystery.
I have
Okay,
the
all
voice
right.
of the character. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So yeah, you already know this
I
character.
know her.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just figuring out kind of the plotty part of it.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
and sounds like you've done that already with two books. So
Yeah.
you've
Well, I
got
don't know though. I
it.
always feel like, okay, I know how to write the book I wrote. I'm not sure if I know how to write the next book, but I do have more confidence that I will figure it out.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I have interviewed authors who are debuts all the way up to authors who have been at it for 30 years, and every one of them, the book doesn't get easier to write. So
Oh,
I
so
don't want to scare
unfair.
you. I don't want to scare you. It's just every book is its own little beast. It has its
I
own
know.
little issues, and you're always trying to top yourself from your last book,
I
right?
know. I know. It's true. There's always another goal. There's always another hurdle. It is, but it's
Yeah,
fun. I mean, I'm sure talk to writers and sometimes I talk to writers and they're complaining and I complain too because it can be hard, but then I always have to remind myself like this is amazing. I get to read and write all day. That's not
right.
that hard.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
I'm trying to remember. I think it was Lisa Gardner, and I'll paraphrase this because I don't remember the quote exactly, but I Lisa said something on the order of get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yes,
So
that's good. I that's no, but that's exactly what I had to learn when I was talking about how
yeah,
I would start and stop with fiction for years because I was not comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I was
yeah,
interpreting that as, okay, that's a problem. I'm not a writer then. And that's a great way of putting it. I had to learn
yeah.
like, no, it's supposed to be hard and it's
Yeah,
confusing and you knock your head against the wall. And the
yeah,
only difference between those who publish and those who don't, or those who finish and those who don't, is that you don't give up, that you
right,
just keep going until you figure it out.
right.
Publishing is a whole different thing because that's partially in our control. But yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Well, folks, when this episode airs, Welcome to Murder Week will be out, so be sure to order your copy today. You can check out Karen's website at Karen Dukess at, I'm sorry, KarenDukess.com. Karen, what social media platform are you most active
Um,
on?
Instagram at Karen Dukess
Instagram.
on Instagram. Yeah. That's
Okay.
where I
All
am.
righty. Great. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. I had a great time chatting with you about this wonderful novel, and I can't wait for readers to get their hands on it.
Me too. And thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Many thanks to everyone listening. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Undercurrents of Romance. You can find more information about the show at tracydevlyn.com/podcast. Undercurrents of Romance is a proud member of the Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. I'll be back soon with another great romantic read. In the meantime, enjoy the adventure, everyone.